I want to take a few moments with you today to talk about what it is that's going on. Where are we today as a country? What are the issues, what are the opportunities and the challenges that we face? I want to talk about both. I spent a lot of time talking about the challenges, but there are also exciting opportunities. The 21st century, let me say this without apology. The 21st century, if we do a few simple but important things, 21st century will be the most prosperous and potentially most peaceful time in all of human history. Not completely peaceful, not totally prosperous, but both prosperous and peaceful. Let me say something else. If there are a few things that we do right, the next generation of Americans, our children and our grandchildren, will be the most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. We have a chance in this new century, not just here in America, but around the world, to see massive eradications of poverty. We're already seeing millions of people being pulled out of poverty and into the middle class. This is real, and it's happening. But with all that change comes a series of challenges as well, and how to sustain it, how to grow it, and challenges here domestically, how to address it. There's nothing wrong with this country that can't be fixed. You have to fix it. To fix it, you need people that are running for office for that purpose. Not people that have decided to run because it looks good on the resume, or people that decide they want to go to Congress because they can win. You need people that are running because they have a life experience that has led them to conclude certain fundamental truths and are prepared to go out and defend it when they make policy. I think Robert is that kind of policymaker. I know he has lived the free enterprise system. He didn't study it, he didn't read it, he didn't spend an entire lifetime trying to debunk it. He didn't spend weeks trying to teach about it at a university or attack it by teaching at a university. He has lived the free enterprise system. He has seen businesses succeed and other businesses fail. He has seen what goes into people's thought process to decide whether to invest their money or not. At a fundamental core, he understands that what makes the American economy grow, in fact, what makes all economies grow, is when people that have access to money, whether it's the money you save or the money that someone lends you, they take that money and they say, you know what, I'm not going to leave it in the bank. I'm not going to put it in a coffee can for a rainy day. I'm going to risk it. I may lose it all. I may double it. But I believe so much in my idea that I'm going to risk it. I'm going to invest it. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to max out my credit card and open it up out of the spare bedroom of my home, in violation of the zoning code. I'm going to invest. I believe in this idea someone told me about. I'm not going to make this. I'll take it out of the money market account. I'm going to invest it because I believe this idea can work. And it does. And 5 years from now, there's 15 people working for you. Not 15,000, 15 people. That means there are now 15 families who are feeding their kids and putting them through school and buying their first home and stimulating the economy by spending money into the economy because of your dream. Now imagine that happening over and over again, decade after decade. That is the foundations of our prosperity. Robert understands it because he's seen that thought process. He's gone through it himself. Now this, for some of you folks that are job creators and have lived in the business world your whole life, you're probably thinking, yeah, yes, and we know this. Why are you telling us this? Why are you preaching to the proverbial choir? Because I promise you, there is a shortage of people that understand that in Washington, D.C. and the government. There's a shortage of people that truly understand the basic fundamentals of economic growth and prosperity. And because they do, they get everything else wrong. They don't understand what the proper role of government is and what government should be involved in. So we can never have enough people who believe in these things, who understand these things, and who will support these things. And that's why I'm so excited that I believe that in 5 weeks and 6 days, he will send them to us to Washington, D.C. to serve in the United States House. And I'm excited about that opportunity. You should be as well. Let me also encourage you to get involved in all your other races. Because what happens at the local level is infinitely more important than what happens at the federal level, on a real-world, day-to-day basis. I used to serve in the city commission, where when people's garbage didn't get picked up on time, I heard about it. You know, people want to talk about foreign policy, they want to talk about tax policy now in the U.S. Senate, but I have never had government as intense as the year and a half I served in the local government of a small city of 5,000 people. It's almost as powerful to me as a condominium board. And that usually goes over much better South So, people ask me all the time what I want to do in politics. I said one of two things. I want to be the president of the condominium board, or I used to say the commissioner of the National Football League. Now, maybe I'd rather be so let's talk for a moment about these opportunities, because Felix's story has been told to us for a moment. The great news about America is that it's not a unique story. It happens every day. It's happening right now. right now, somewhere within walking distance of this building, maybe one of the people that works here is on their way to that. By the way, the American dream is not about being wealthy, per se. Although, that may be your dream, it has been mine from time to time until I chose politics. But the point, it's not what the American dream is about. The American dream is about being able to fulfill your God-given potential. The idea that God has given you a certain set of skills and talents, and that you want to be able to live that to the fullest. I'll tell you why that's so important. It's rare. In 6,000 years of recorded human history, almost everyone was poor and powerless. In 6,000 years of recorded human history, almost everyone was poor and powerless. The only people who had power, the only people who had wealth, were the same small group of people over and over again. The closer you were to the people in charge, the better off you were. If your parents were born poor, you were poor. If your parents had no political power, you had no power. Your rights were whatever your government told you they were. Your government said, these are what your rights are. This is what we've decided your rights are. We're going to let you have them until we change our mind. Not unheard of for the king to come and take your land, your daughter, your son, everything you own. It still happens in some parts of the world, believe it or not. This is the human condition. That's the rule, not the exception. What made America really a miraculous experiment was that it turned that on its head. It said that's not true that your rights come from your government. They come from God. That we're born with these rights. All of us are born with these rights. We need a government in order to protect those rights. Not to give them to us, not to grant them, but to protect them and to defend them. And it set up a very specific idea of what the government's role should be. By the way, when you believe that everyone is equal in the eyes of God, and everyone should have the same opportunities no matter where you were born in life, there's an economic reaction to that too, hence the free enterprise system. A merit-based system. One that's basically has said, look, we think anyone should be able to put their boss out of business if their idea is better and they're willing to work harder. And the free enterprise system works in that way. Now, there's a role of government in all of this. There's a role for government to play. We are not anarchists. To be a limited government conservative does not mean you're anti-government. On the contrary, government is an important institution, and it has an important role to play. We need a set of regulations to ensure that the water you drink is clean, that the air you breathe is breathable, that if you have a contract with somebody, that they have to honor it or you can take them to court, that if you have a piece of paper that says that you own a piece of property, it belongs to you and you have somewhere to protect it, that those laws are going to be honored. By the way, it's hard to develop the economy of a country that isn't safe, particularly if you're being invaded, it's really bad for business. If you're at war continuously with your neighbors, it's bad for business. So you need a government that provides for the national defense. There's an important role for government to play. But while government is an important institution, it has never been the most important institution in our society. The most important institutions in our society begins with our people, in their personal lives, as fathers and husbands and neighbors and family members. It extends to their interaction with one another through voluntary organizations, charity, and of course government has a role to play in all of that. Why am I stating all these obvious things today? Because that's in debate right now. We are having a debate about what government's role can be confronted with the challenges of this new century. And I think we can find the answers to that question by understanding both our history and in so doing, having a better understanding of our future. The 21st century is a time of extraordinary promise. There are more people than ever around the world that can now afford to buy the stuff that we invent and build. But we have to create the economic conditions for people to do business here. And we have to create the human conditions for our people to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. So I want to touch upon those two very briefly. Let's talk first about the economic conditions that you need. The economic conditions that we need in order to grow the economy, that what government can do to foster those conditions, are pretty straightforward. The first thing you want is predictability. You have to know what the laws are and how you're going to be regulated and taxed today, tomorrow, and 5 years from now. No one plans on a 30-day basis. When you decide to take that money that you've made or borrowed and decide to invest it, one of the things that goes into your calculation about whether to do it or not is, here are the rules. And if I invest this money under these rules, I think I can make it or I don't think I can make it. I think I can make this much money or I don't think I can make this much money. Imagine if those rules are unpredictable, if they're constantly changing. If you can't predict what they're going to be, maybe the tax rate will be 39% or maybe it'll be 35%. Well, it becomes more difficult for you to make that equation happen. Same thing with regulations. If you are at the whim of basically discretionary decision making, where anybody can just write a rule overnight without any rhyme or reason, without any input, and dramatically impact your ability to make a profit and succeed, that discourages you from investing. So the first thing people look for, whether it's our tax code or our regulatory code, is predictability. But predictability alone is not enough. Because if your tax code is predictably high and your regulations are predictably complicated, you lose the second thing that we need, and that's incentive. People invest money in business to make money back. Otherwise, they just leave it in the bank or in the coffee can or under their mattress. You invest $1 because you want to make 5 back or 3 back. But if it comes to the point where your tax rate in doing that is so high that your profit isn't as high as your risk, you decide not to take the risk. And especially in the 21st century, hence the challenge of this new century, where there are so many places now you can invest that weren't around 10 years ago. 15, 20 years ago, you didn't have as many investment options as you do now. Now there are so many places around the world who want people to invest there, who are going out of their way to help people invest there. Look at our corporate tax rate. It's just simply uncompetitive. We cannot compete with the highest tax rate in the industrialized world on the corporate side. And that's just a fact. That it's not that people are anti-tax or anti-government. It is math. In order for you to risk the money you have made, you have to know that you have a reasonable chance at a certain rate of return, a certain profit. And the higher those taxes are, the harder that is. And so what people are looking for out of our government is a combination of predictable and stable tax and regulatory policy combined with affordable tax rates and affordable regulations. Which segues into 2 myths that are out there that I want to touch on. The first myth that I'm constantly running into, and that those of us who believe in limited government have to fight against, is this myth that big government helps the people who are trying to make it. That big government is good for the little guy. That is false. The fact of the matter is that if you are a billionaire or a Fortune 500 mega corporation, you may not like big government, but you can afford to deal with it. I'm not saying you're a fan of big government. I'm just saying that if the regulatory code is thousands of pages thick, you can hire the best. A big business and a multi-billionaire can hire the best lawyers and accountants in America to figure their way through it. And if they really don't like it, they can hire the best lobbyists in Washington to change it. Here's the other thing about big business versus the small business. And that is they can also, the more powerful the government is, the more involved government is in the economy, the more role the government plays in picking winners and losers. And you see this all the time, where a politically connected business entity who claims to be in favor of free enterprise is in fact using their political influence to help government write rules and tax policy to destroy competition, to give them a competitive advantage, to get their hands on the government dollars. The government decides we're going to start picking winners and losers in the energy field. That's how Solyndra gets their money, because they're politically connected, and someone else does not. That's not good for competition and economic growth. Who can't afford to do that? It's the people that are trying to make it. It's the small business owner. It's the person who quits their job because they believe they can do that job better than their boss does it. They can't afford to hire the lobbyists, the lawyers, the accountants. They can't navigate the regulations and the complicated taxes. They're the ones that are hurt by it. And so one of the great myths that we have to knock down is this idea that big government and government spending and more government programs are what helps the people who are trying to make it. It doesn't. It crushes them. It literally makes it impossible for you to open up a business, have a spare bedroom in your home. And all these, by the way, are not federal policies. There are plenty of local and state policies that do that to people as well. We need to recognize that when we talk about that decision-making process. And so the thing we need to do as policymakers is create the conditions for rapid economic growth. The last point I should make about the uncertainty part of it is the national debt. People always say, what does the debt have to do with jobs and unemployment? It has everything to do with it, and here's why. First, every dollar has to come from somewhere. So every dollar that's going into government debt means there's a dollar that's not available for private investment. Every dollar that someone's using to give the federal government money is a dollar that is not available for you to borrow or for you to get someone to invest into your business. So that's the first impact of it. But here's the more dramatic one. People that know about this stuff, I remember we talked about how future profits is what drives people to invest or take a risk. Well, they see a country with a $16 trillion debt and no plan to bring it under control. And their conclusion is this country's going to have massive tax increases soon. And why am I going to invest money in a business in order to make money in the future at a time when you're going to have massive tax increases? You're going to cut into my profits. It's not worth it. Leave it in the bank. Put it under the mattress. Or invest it in another country with a more stable future. Uncertainty worries investors. Uncertainty worries capital. Uncertainty worries the people who have money available to lend or money available to invest. And the result is businesses don't grow and jobs aren't created. I think it is nothing short of an economic miracle that our economy is still growing, as small as the growth and anemic as it may be, given everything it faces coming out of Washington, D.C. It is a testament to the resilience of our economy and to the resilience of our people that this economy isn't into a deep recession at this point, despite the extraordinary policy uncertainty that's coming out of Washington, D.C., and the destructive anti-business rhetoric that you hear constantly out of Washington, D.C. from this administration. And so I think that the first thing we need to do as policymakers, and I hope we can do it in a bipartisan fashion, is come to Washington, D.C. and begin to insist, number one, that all regulations be a product of a cost-benefit analysis. That you don't just simply sit there and hear all the great things a regulation is going to do, but for every regulation, government should have to answer the question, how many jobs will this destroy, how many people it will put out of business, how many businesses might go under, how much will this cost to comply with, and how much will it discourage people from investing. Number two, we need to have a simpler tax code that is also affordable. A tax code that is easier to comply with, and more importantly, that it incentivizes people to spend and invest into our economy. The third thing we need is a pro-American energy policy. We are the most energy-rich country on the face of the earth. We need to start acting like it. And that means that God has blessed us with lands under federal control that have massive deposits of natural gas and petroleum. We need to use it in a safe way, in a responsible way, but we need to use it. It makes no sense not to be using it. And if you do, you will see American manufacturing return. The second thing we need to do, because that's great to create these conditions for economic growth, but you also have to have a people that are prepared to meet those opportunities. Now, much of this is state policy that has to be done, but the federal government can do some things on the edges to encourage it. We have got to prepare our people for the skills that it will take to succeed in this new century. The hard, cold truth is that in this new century, there are no new jobs for people that don't have advanced skills. You have to have a PhD or a master's. There are plenty of good paying jobs and careers that require 2 years of education, a year and a half post-high school. For the life of me, I don't know why we stigmatize career education. There's no linkage between our community, between our business community and our educational community in many places. What are the new jobs of the 21st century? And are we creating kids? Are we raising children that are graduating prepared to meet it? Why can't kids graduate from high school with a diploma and an industry-certified skill if they're not going to go to college or a four-year university? Why can't we turn out a workforce that's able to do that? More importantly, we need to accept that in the 21st century, sometimes we may have to retrain 2 or 3 times. Because you may go work in an industry that won't exist in 4 years because it's replaced by a new industry. We need to also create at the state and local levels a platform where people can be retrained quickly to re-enter the workforce and where they can transfer some of the skills they already have into doing that. But the topic of getting our people ready isn't just about education. The fact of the matter is that you can't separate the moral and social well-being of your people from their economic well-being. Where you come from, how you've been raised, the people you've been raised around, and the values that have been instilled in you are critical to your success or to your failure. That's not my opinion. That is a historical fact. That's a historical fact. It is impossible to have a strong country without strong people. And it is impossible to have strong people with strong values. Strong values is the difference between what is legal and what is right. Strong values is what people use and rely upon to make responsible decisions in their everyday lives. Laws can only tell you what's legal. It's our values that inform us what's right. And there's no greater teacher than values in the family structure. And that's why the evidence is overwhelming. That increasingly in this new century, the divider in America between rich and poor isn't race, isn't class, isn't neighborhood necessarily, it's family structure. It's the fact that we are struggling because families are falling apart. What role can government play in that? We can't pass a law that mandates people be better fathers and mothers. The role we can play is to use this platform and every platform we have to remind everyone that the most important job they will ever have is not their job as a senator or a congressman or a business executive or an owner of a successful business. The most influential job you will ever have is those few years that you are able to help mold children into adults. You only get a few years to get it right. And if you don't get it right, it will impact them the rest of their lives. As hard as it is for us to believe, the lessons that kids are learning when they're 8 and 9 years old or fail to learn invariably determine who they grow up to be and how they behave when they grow up. And you can't have a strong country without strong people. You can't have strong people without strong values. We have to stop feeling guilty about saying that. The founders knew that well. And they supported the institutions that are excellent transmitters of those values. The faith community is essential in this, and there are other community groups that are helpful with that as well. But you can have the best education in the world. If your values are wrong, if your compass is broken, you ultimately won't succeed. And our country will pay the price for it. So these are the truths of the 21st century. Some involve government, some do not. If we do these few things, they're not, they may be hard to do, but they're not difficult to imagine. And we live at a time where everyone wants to call a trick play. What innovative, magical new policy can we come up with? There are several fundamental truths that still apply. If we re-embrace them and return to them, we can and will be prosperous again. There's still no other nation on earth that would rather be. Let me close by, we got a few minutes, so let me just close by saying that this notion of America remaining the greatest country in the world isn't just good for us. It's essential for the planet. There is still no replacement for America and for our example and for our values. The greatest thing we give the world is our example. You realize that everywhere on this planet, there isn't a country you can go to where you're not going to find someone who knows someone here, who's been able to do here what they would never have been able to do over there. Do not underestimate the inspirational value of that. That all over the world, people aren't just demanding freedom, they're demanding prosperity. Because after being told for centuries that it wasn't possible for people like them, America has proven that that's not true. And the impact of that economically is real. You may not care about what's happening halfway around the world on a daily basis, but you should. Because understand that the more peaceful the Middle East could become, the freer they truly are, the more they walk away from a failed ideology and embrace the promise of the 21st century, the more there will be people that can afford to buy the stuff that your children grow up to invent or build, the more potential business partners we have. Economic growth around the world will benefit our country more than any country on the planet, because we are still as hardworking, as productive, and as creative as any people have ever been. All we need now is a few government leaders that understand this and are worthy of the people that sent them there. I know Robert will be one of them, and I hope we'll have a few others, hopefully a new one in the White House. And I just am grateful for the opportunity to talk to you guys today about these important issues, and I look forward to coming back with you again in the future. Thank you.